Hello, this is Pastor Doug McCoy from the West Side Christian Church. I want to thank you for watching one of our recent messages here online. Also want to extend an invitation to you to join us in person. We do gather as a group physically in person at a place called the McCoy Center in Hilliard. It's right behind the Crooked Can, right off of Main Street. Usually we're there at 10 a.m., but you may want to check our calendar before you come. Sometimes we are on the move. When we're there at the McCoy, this is what you can expect. We all come in 9:30, 10 o'clock. We greet one another, we fellowship, spend some time, talk a little bit, get to know each other, encourage, comfort each other if need be. 10 o'clock, we start our service. We have some songs, a few announcements. Sometimes we take communion to remember the sacrifice and the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We may take up a free will offering where people contribute to God's work financially as they feel led. And then we have a message very much like the one that you are about to watch here today. Usually we spend about an hour together. We depart with smiles, hugs, handshakes, all those wonderful things, because we are trying to be a family doing God's mission together. If that sounds good to you, we would love to have you. Once again, that's 10 a.m. at the McCoy Center, West Side Christian Church. Look forward to meeting you. Good morning.
Morning.
Since we are back here after our 3 or so weeks of being separated and scattered, I wanted to bring a message to you that I find to be extremely important. It comes from the 4th chapter of the Epistle of James. You may want to turn there and get it ready. That's James chapter 4, second half of the New Testament thereabouts. So that's what you're looking for. As you get there, let me tell you why, or give you at least an example of why I think the teaching we're going to find in these verses is so important. Goes back to something I saw on TV. Would have been perhaps 2000, perhaps 2001, somewhere in that vicinity. It was lunchtime. I always like to watch a little TV as I'm eating my lunch. So what I was watching this day was some dating show. I think it was on the Learning Channel. And you could say, Doug, that doesn't seem very much like something you would like, and it really wasn't. But that was pre-Internet 2.0 days for those that didn't experience those things. That was pre-YouTube. You took what you were given, and that's the way it was. So on this particular lunchtime, it was this dating show, and they were pairing up people, sending them out on some sort of blind date. They paired up a pretty sweet, normal young lady with a rather quirky guy. And this quirky guy, he did several oddball things during their date, but the worst was at the very end. At the very end, he goes up to this sweet young lady, and he had like a jewelry box or a ring box, right? The kind of a box that you open, a clamshell, you open it up and a ring is inside. That's what he said, I have a gift for you. And he hands her this box, and she's, oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. She opens it up. There was not a ring inside. There was not jewelry inside that box. Instead, there was an insect, and not a normal insect like an ant or a ladybug or something like that. It was something awful. I can't remember if it was a praying mantis or a scorpion or tarantula, but it was something in that neighborhood, right? And expectedly enough, the young lady screams, she throws it down, and she stomps off to the car. She demands to be taken home. In the car, she is sitting as far away from this guy as she possibly can. She is up against the passenger door. Her arms are crossed, scowl on her face. She is not talking. She's given the silent treatment. Pretty clear to anybody in the vicinity, date's over, won't be a second, won't be another, right? This is the end of the road for you two. This guy, this quirky guy, as he's driving, he can see this as well as me. And then he does the worst thing yet that he has done, or maybe the oddest, maybe the quirkiest, maybe the funniest. I thought it was kind of funny, but he sighs, he audibly sighs. And then he asks himself audibly, why does this keep happening? And it's funny to me for two reasons. One, I think it's funny that he could not understand why this kept happening. But the second thing that's funny about it is that indicates he's done this before. That there was some other occasion where he gave some woman an arachnid And it turned out the exact same way. How many times? I don't know. But at least once, right? He has done this before. So that's the question he asks. Why does this keep happening? And again, the facetious, snarky side of me wants to tell him, because you keep giving women bugs, dude. That's why this keeps happening. But the more helpful side of me wants to say, well, this keeps happening for the same reason that anything keeps happening. This keeps happening for the same reason that everything keeps happening. Most everything in life happens because of a pattern of cause and effect. Action and reaction. You do this thing, you get that result. That's why most things happen. We're so familiar with this that we have little phrases to describe it. What goes around comes around. You get what you give. Garbage in, garbage out. You're familiar with those phrases, right? So we know that there is this pattern of cause and effect. It's rather easy to see. Most of the time we can document diagram the steps of it. It's very easy to predict. Most of the time we can foresee how a certain action is going to turn out, what sort of result this sort of activity is going to have. So this pattern of cause and effect, this is why things happen. We see this in politics, we see it in finance, we see it in society and culture, we see it in our bodies. We do something to our body is going to respond in a certain way. And we also see it in our relationships. We see it in our interactions with other people. We see it in the way these interactions turn out. And that's what James is going to show us here. If we can't see it on our own, James is going to show it to us. James chapter 4, there's a much larger context here. James is very hard to dissect, but definitely there's a larger context going on because he ends chapter 3 by saying, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. So peace is on his mind. The way that you interact with people peaceably is on his mind. But that leads him into chapter 4 where he says this, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something, but don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. What causes fights among you? That's what James rhetorically asks us here at the beginning of chapter 4. Technically, it's what causes fights and quarrels among you. We had to separate it a little bit for our images and for our notes. We've separated to what causes fights among you. We were going to cut it down to just what causes fights, but we thought maybe that didn't sound so good. So it sounds a little better to say what causes fights among you. That is what James is talking about here. James is a unique book, wonderful book, actually, in the New Testament. Very much misunderstood, though, as well. A lot of people look at James and they think it's legalistic. They think he's a hard case, given hard laws, being pretty harsh with us, having really high expectations and no grace for when we violate those expectations. Even Martin Luther, 15th century reformer, he's the guy that got us thinking along the lines that we still are thinking in today about how we approach God through the scripture. He said James is an epistle of straw. I mean, he didn't understand. It was the wrong thing for him to say, but that's what he said. James is an epistle of straw because to him it sounded legalistic, and he was very anti-legalistic. I understand the confusion about that. I understand people misunderstanding what James is doing here. Actually, the truth about James is he's not legalistic, but he sounds that way because his book is a book of wisdom. Now, if you're familiar with the Old Testament, you know that right there in the middle of our English arrangement of the Old Testament, you have these 5 books that we tend to call poetry. That's the English name for them, but a better name for them is wisdom poetry, or some people just plain call them wisdom. That's Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. The thing about the wisdom books is they are presenting wisdom to us, and they are doing it in a real matter-of-fact, cut and dry, black and white, 0 or 100, yes or no kind of way. These guys know by the power of the Holy Spirit what is wise. That's what is not just good and right, but also what's beneficial, what's productive, what's going to turn out well. They simply know that. God has blessed them to know that, and they just tell us that. And they don't give us a whole lot of wiggle room about it. They are just saying, this is wisdom. You need to know this. One of my favorite examples, I believe, is, let me give you it exactly. I believe is it 26:17 or is it 27:16? I can't. 26:17, there you go. Like one who grabs a stray dog by the ears is someone who rushes into a quarrel, not his own. So two ideas that he's telling us there. Don't rush into a quarrel that's not yours. Don't get into a fight that's not your fight. And don't grab a dog by the ears. You often hear me paraphrase this proverb. If you grab a dog by the ears, he's going to bite you. Okay? Now, they're not telling you not to do that. You want to get bit, go ahead. You want to grab the dog by the ears, it's your life. Feel free. But they are telling you quite strongly, this is what will happen. Cause and effect. You grab a dog by the ears, you're going to get bit. It's just their style. They know they are correct, so they don't give a whole lot of wiggle room there. We interpret that as legalism. They would just interpret it as logic. This is wise, and there's no need to discuss these things. Grabbing a dog by the ears, get you bit, end of discussion. James is writing like them. James is a Jewish man. He is Jesus' half-brother, the son of Joseph and Mary, becomes leader of the church after Jesus' resurrection in Acts chapter 15. He would have been versed in all these books, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. He would have known them all. He would have understood wisdom, and that is what he's bringing to us. That is how he's writing. He's writing in this wisdom style. Here in chapter 4, and again, some of it bleeds over to chapter 3, and some of it bleeds into the following verses that we didn't read. But here in chapter 4, he's given us wisdom about relationships. He's given us wisdom about people, about how to interact with people. Specifically, he's given us wisdom about fights, quarrels, arguments that we have with people. He is telling us where they come from, what starts them, why we have them. That's the first thing he tells us. And then he goes on, at the very least implies, I say implies because, again, the wisdom authors didn't always tell us what we should do. They expected us to figure it out ourselves. But at the very least, he implies how we can escape them. So James has given us this wisdom here. I'm going to tell you where fights come from, and then I'm going to at least imply to you how you can avoid them, how you can escape them, how you can stop having them. Does that sound good? All right, well, let's go and take a look at it. As I see it, what James gives us here are two paths, or I think in your notes I called them two ways. Again, James is wisdom. He's poetry. I don't know if you see that there. He is rather poetic by New Testament terms. And so it's a little hard to chop up. Matthew 11, which we looked at last week, was a lot easier to diagram. This is a lot harder. But I believe what he's showing us here is at least two ways that you could interact with people, and he shows us the results of those, where they end up, the destination of those ways as well. I want to look at the first way with you. That's how we start. I call this the way it was. Is that what I called it in your notes? This is how things were among James' readers. This is what they were doing, and this is what they were experiencing. So again, you always have to understand that with the Bible, particularly with the New Testament epistles, there was an original recipient. You know, Paul wrote this letter to the Philippians. Paul wrote this letter to the Thessalonians. But the Holy Spirit always intended it to be broader, to be delivered to us as well. But we're always considering those original recipients here. Well, James is writing to these original recipients, and he says, this is what you're doing. This is the way it is among you. So that's why I call this the way it was. I think there's four steps. He diagrams this cause and effect pattern for them that is resulting in what they are experiencing, that is resulting in fights and quarrels. He really does it by twos. What causes fights and quarrels among you? You want something but don't get it. You kill and covet. You cannot have which one you quarrel, fight. So he kind of goes back and forth in little pairs. But really, I think there's four steps here, four things that result, four cause and effect motions that result in an argument or a quarrel or a fight. The first is desire. He says you want something. There's something that you want. I mean, that's pretty simple. I think he's implying there's something that you want from other people. There's something that you are hoping or expecting another person to give to you. If you could get it for yourself, that would be the end of the road. There'd be no problem. But apparently you can't get it for yourself. You need someone else to get it for you. That's where the trouble begins. It begins with this desire. Next step is denial. You have this desire, you want something, but James goes on and says, you don't get it. So you want something from someone else. You want someone else to give you something. Maybe you ask for it. Maybe you request it. They tell you no. They refuse. Now, why do they refuse? James doesn't say. It could be a dozen different reasons. They don't want to. They can't. It's not an appropriate request. Who knows? Dozens of reasons why they may say no, but they say no. You want something. You don't get it. You ask another person to give you something. They refuse. They deny you. That's the second step. Third step is where things really go bad. I think I called this one aggression. Is that correct? James describes this very powerful term to say you kill and covet. More than likely that's figurative language there, not literal language. I doubt they were literally killing each other. If they were, the Romans certainly would have put a stop to it somehow. But he probably means that figuratively. You are killing each other. You are being aggressive with one another. Really, what he's saying there, you're trying to force one another. You're using force to get what you want. You wanted something, you were refused, and now you're trying to force it. Many ways we can force things. Literal is one way. He could be talking about physical force, physical killing, or at least attacking. But there are other ways to do this as well. You can do it verbally. You can do it emotionally. You can do it financially. You can pressure. You can manipulate. All kind of ways that we try to force people to give us what we want. It's a kind of instinctual behavior. It's kind of second nature to us. You told me no, I'm going to try to take it anyway. And that's what James says they were doing. You want something, you don't get it, you try to take it by force. Then that brings us to the fourth and final step. I called that fallout in the notes. Maybe I should have called it resistance. And this is the fight and the quarrel. The people put up resistance. The people do not submit to your aggression. You've tried to force it. You've tried to take what you want since they're not willing to give it. And they're putting up a wall. They're putting up a fight. They're making you engage in a battle. If they didn't do that, if they just submitted to you, there wouldn't be a fight. There wouldn't be a quarrel. You would then be an oppressor, though. You still wouldn't be a great person doing great things, but there wouldn't be a fight. In this case, they aren't giving in to you. They are resisting. They're matching your force with force. And what's the end result? We have a battle. We have a quarrel. We have a fight. So that's the four steps James takes it through here. You want something, but don't get it. You ramp it up with aggression, and then there's the fallout of a fight or a quarrel. What we need to see about this is that this was not theoretical for James and his people. This was actual. The way he speaks as if, it's not like this could be happening. This is happening. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? The logical assumption is that there were fights and quarrels among them. And I don't know if that means if that was among them as a church. That's how I've always interpreted it. Of course, as you know, I grew up in a church that fought and quarreled a lot, so it's natural for me to interpret it that way. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when he says among you, doesn't mean among you as a church, but among you as church people, that you're leaving the church and you're getting in a fight at home, you're getting in a fight in your neighborhood, you're getting in a fight at the workplace. But this was in some way, shape, or form actual for them. This wasn't just theory. This was what was really happening. Sometimes it's actual for us as well, isn't it? We often have fights and quarrels in church, at home, in the neighborhood, in the workplace. We often desire something and are denied. So we ramp it up with aggression, and there's fallout. I called this the way it is, the way it was for them. I guess we call it the way it is for us. Really, we could just call it the way of conflict. There is a way of conflict. This four-step path is it, and we often walk it. We often take this path. We often go the way of conflict. That's the first thing James is telling us here. Now, I want to pause right there, because I understand this might seem a little strange. As you can tell, I'm excited about this passage. I love this message that James is bringing to us. So far, it seems rather ugly, doesn't it? It may be real, but it's an ugly real. This is an ugly reality. Doug, why are you so excited about this? Why do you think this is so important? Well, the reason is, I think this is important. I'm so excited by this teaching because if you look past the ugly reality, you see that what we're getting is an explanation. James is answering why. He is telling us why things happen. That's what that guy on the dating show wanted to know, right? He keeps giving girls to bugs. They keep ending the date. He wanted to know why. We think it's self-explanatory. I would agree. But he wanted to know why. He wanted an explanation. When you have an explanation, when you have an understanding of cause and effect, what can you do? You can change. You can adjust. You can take a different path, try a different action, and see if you get a different reaction. We all understand this, again, rather instinctively. This is, again, part of, we have those folk wisdom sayings, garbage in, garbage out. What goes around comes around. You get what you give. We all understand that this is how it works. We see it not only in that folk wisdom, but we see it on television as well. There's a series of television commercials. They've been on the air for 15 years. The first one was in the Super Bowl of 2010, and they are telling us this exact same thing, that when you understand something, you can then counter it. You can then adjust to it. They're Snickers commercials. Commercials for Snickers candy bar. Are you familiar with these commercials? I think it says you're not yourself when you're hungry. Does that sound about right? And the way that the commercial goes is there's always some person, and they're represented by a celebrity. It's not supposed to be the celebrity, but it's a person, and they're represented by the celebrity, and the celebrity's acting very unpleasant. I think the first one was Betty White, and then there was Richard Lewis and Roseanne Barr, and Joe Pesci, I think, was one of them. And so this person is acting unpleasant to the people around them. The people around them come up with a Snickers and say, here, eat this. The person says, why? And they say, because you're not yourself when you're hungry. Then the person eats the Snickers and they turn back to themselves and they say, better? And the person says, yep, I'm better. The worst of these was the Willem Dafoe one. I don't know if you saw that one, where he was supposed to be Marilyn Monroe, but he had turned into Willem Dafoe, and he was wearing the white dress. I didn't need to see Willem Dafoe in a white dress in the middle of the Super Bowl, but there you go. All right, I didn't have a choice. It's in my head. Now it's in yours as well. But that commercial is telling us, when you understand what the problem is, when you understand the problem is not just this person is unpleasant, but something is making them unpleasant, then you can counter it. Then you can adjust to it. And James, maybe directly, maybe indirectly, maybe he clearly states it, but at least he implies it. We can make a change as well. We don't have to go the way things are, the way things were. We can go the way things could be. That's the second path that he gives it. There's a way things could be for us. And he's going to outline this as well. This is what the people he was originally writing to could have done and what they could have experienced. This is what we today could do and could experience. Again, there's 4 steps here. I'm going to take you through them rather rapidly. The first is that you check your desire. Okay, if you have a desire and you have expressed it, I would like this, will you give it to me? And you notice that the temperature is rising and we are heading toward that denial, toward that aggression, toward that fallout. What you can do is check your desire. Is it a good desire? James says here, he says, you ask with wrong motives. I think some versions say impure motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasure. So he's telling the people, one of the problems here is that you want the wrong things. Amen. Now, it's not wrong to want things. There are things that we all would like to have. There are things that we all need. Not every desire is wrong. I've spoken with dozens of people. They've come to me and said, I would like a spouse. I would like a wife. I would like a husband. Not a bad desire. Genesis 1 and 2, Matthew 19, 1 Corinthians 7. Not wrong to desire a spouse. So some desires are good. Other desires are not good. Solomon, God appeared to Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 3. He says, ask me anything. David has died. Solomon is now leading Israel. He knows he's in over his head. And he says to God, give me wisdom. That's what I would like to have, wisdom. And God says to him, you could have asked, and most people would have asked, for long life, or wealth or the death of your enemies. You could have asked for something wrong, but you asked for something right. We're seeing not all desires are equal. If you have a good desire, that's a good desire. If you have a wrong desire, if what you want another person to give you is not right to want, then what happens? The train stops. That's the end of the path. You drop it. It's over. If you are a kingdom person, if you are a person of God, which is what Jesus has called us to be, I understand my desire is wrong. I'm going to release it. I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to want that anymore. So that's the first step. Check your desire. Second is check your behavior. Even if the desire is right, the way to get it might be wrong. And that takes us back to that phrase, you kill and covet that he brings out there. Killing and coveting is always wrong, even if what you want is right. These people can come to me and say, well, Doug, I want a spouse, I want a wife or a husband, not a wrong desire. Hey, here's how I'm going to get it. I'm going to go over to my neighbor's house when they're gone, and I'm going to take theirs. I'm going to take their husband. No, that's a wrong way to try to satisfy a right desire. Killing and coveting is always wrong. If you are attempting to get what you want by force, that again is not correct. Killing, coveting, not kingdom. That's not what kingdom people do, even if they're trying to get kingdom things. So you check your behavior. That's not the way we're going to behave. Third one that I have here, I think this one might be the most surprising, perhaps. Ask God. Ask God instead of people. He says there in verse 3, is it verse 3? You do not have, that's verse 2, the end of verse 2, you do not have because you do not ask God. Our inclination is to expect people to give us what we want. I want this thing, this person can give it to me. If I ask and they deny, I'm not going to get it, so then I use force. James says, no, it's not that way at all. The one that you need to ask is God. You don't expect people to give you what only God can give you. And I'm almost out of time, but there's a way that I think about this that I want to show you real quick. It comes from a Far Side commercial, cartoon. I don't know if you can see this or not. This guy wants his dog to mow the yard. Not something that a dog can typically do. This dog has gone and tried to do it and is done. He's got half of it done. It's not neat the way it's supposed to be, and the guy still says, you're a bad dog, no biscuit. That's the funny part, that he says, no biscuit, no treat for you, because you didn't mow the yard, right? You can't expect a dog to mow your yard. It's an unfair expectation. You can't expect people to give you most of what you want. I know it looks like they can. I know that our sinful nature is going to say, I can get this from them. Most of the time you can't. So don't ask them. Don't go beat the dog because it didn't mow the grass. Okay? You ask God, who can give you what you want, maybe through people, maybe in some other wonderful way. And then the last step in this path is to accept no. Take no for an answer. Is that how I have it in your notes? Yeah, take no for an answer. We don't see this in this passage, but if you drop down again, I believe the context goes at least all the way through verse 10. From chapter 3, 18, at least to verse 10, he's talking about peace and fighting and quarreling. So in verse 7, he says, submit yourselves then to God. Submit to God. Surrender to what God says. Sometimes God says no. Even to his children, even to good people who have done everything right. Your desire is right. Your behavior was right. You asked him like you were supposed to rather than trying to take it from other people. And he can still say no. That's right. You don't need it. You're not going to get it. You need to accept that. We see that repeatedly in the scriptures. Samuel wanted Saul to be king. Even after Saul sinned and God rejected him. And he kept going back to God and saying, can't we do something about Saul? God finally told him, no, and stop asking. Okay, we're going to pick a new king. It's not going to be Saul. That's the way it is. You have to accept it. David wanted to build the temple, called in the prophets, said, I'm going to build a temple. What did God say? You're not. You don't get to build it. David had to accept it. Those are a couple good biblical examples of people accepting no for an answer. What's the greatest biblical example, though, of a man of God taking no as an answer, accepting when God said no? Say it again. Say, who was it? Jesus. When was it? The Garden of Gethsemane. If I can escape the cross, I'd like to. Can't blame him. Can't blame him one bit for praying that. God said no, and he said what? Your will be done. I will take no for an answer. In fact, I said the way things are, the way things were, we could call that the way of conflict. The way things could be, we really could call that the way of Christ. Because this is what we see in Jesus. The old-time preacher said, you got to be preaching Jesus every sermon. Jesus isn't mentioned here by name in James, but he is here in spirit. He inspired these words. He demonstrated this way of life. Jesus often didn't get what he wanted from the disciples, not just the random people in the countryside. From the 12 that he chose, he did not get what he wanted. And he expressed that sometimes. He would call them you of little faith. One time he said, how long am I going to put up with you? And we probably put a little more frustration on that than Jesus had, but he was expressing, you guys aren't exactly what I'd like you to be and what you ought to be. But he accepted that. And he still brought these 12 guys that weren't what he wanted exactly into the upper room and said, I've been looking forward to having this meal with you. He asked God to improve these guys rather than beating on them himself. He never manipulated or forced or coerced or harangued or harassed those 12 guys. What he wanted them to be, disciple makers, was a good thing to want. So Jesus demonstrated all 4 steps of this way. This way really is the way of Christ. We have to choose, we can choose between the way of conflict and the way of Christ. And James is telling us, pick the way of Christ. Now, there was a little bit there that I was going to add. Can we try something different? I think we'll skip that part because we are out of time and I want us to end on time. But that is what we're being asked to do here. The usual way is desire, denial, aggression, and fallout. That's the way it usually goes, the way it will go if left to its own devices. James and Jesus through James, they're calling us to try something different. Let's try this way that doesn't seem as natural, doesn't seem as normal, doesn't seem as instinctive to you, but it may turn out and will turn out, if you trust me, a whole lot better. You're going to get a better result. You won't have fights and quarrels among you anymore. Instead, you will be peacemakers who sow in peace and raise a harvest of righteousness. Hey, it's me again. Wanted to thank you a second time for watching, spending this time with us. We really appreciate it. We would love you to be connected with us. We would love to get connected with you. Several ways you can do that. You can go to our website, find all sorts of information and a Connect card to get involved there. You can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram. Look us up. You will find us Westside Christian Church in Columbus, Ohio. Again, love to be connected with you. Love to get to know you. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.